And now back to your scheduled programming.
Okay, we're doing another Vice debates. These often get a little spicy. It's a good thing we have Taylor, Nashville Hot Taylor, on the show today.
It's a good thing you drug me into another
contentious
conversation about colorism. My straight white male
races
self is
explain
much looking
how
forward to
they
talking
can
about this.
judge
Not
our
really.
colorism.
I honestly can't think of a better person. And speaking of colored people, we also have Cam.
What's up, guys?
You're so white.
Nothing more to be said there, guys. Let's get into this Vice debate. It's titled Minorities Debate Skin Bleaching, Appropriation, and Colorism. Let's watch.
That is a very clear experience and example of colorism. Like, it is real. It happens.
When
like,
you're lighter, people treat you differently.
Like, that's
They
what I think
really
this conversation
do.
really needs to center on. Why is it societally that being lighter skinned has very clear material advantages?
In the future. Okay, so Vice invited people of color from across the country to discuss colorism. For those of you who are like, and racism. Colorism can happen, in and amongst different races where you're actually judged based on lightness or the darkness of your skin tone. A lot of people say it's preferable to be of a lighter skin tone because you're going to get preferential treatment. You're treated better. People are more intrigued by you. You get more opportunities. And that is this idea of colorism. We'll see if it goes in the opposite direction during this talk, although I have a feeling if we have a lot of progressives on this debate, it will not go in the other direction, meaning that Black people can also be colorist towards, lighter skinned people.
Oh, far.
A lot of pink today.
Hello, everyone. I want to thank you for joining us today. My name is Alexis Johnson. I'm a correspondent with Vice News, and I'll also be acting as our moderator for today's panel. We first want to put out the disclaimer that, we've done our best to get you all here today of different ethnicities, different shades, different skin tones to talk about this topic, but we realize we can't represent everybody in this discussion, okay? Today, we're going to be discussing a topic that,
He is beautiful. Looks like a little model. Look at the hair.
Brown-skinned Black woman moving throughout the world. It's something that I think about a lot. It's something that I hear being discussed a lot, both in real life, online, in the media. Today, we're here to talk about colorism. What is colorism and how do you define it?
I gave my
Hi,
definition.
my name is Koa and I identify as biracial. I think about colorism as
I identify as biracial. You just are biracial. This is a weird thing when I hear people talk about race to be like, I identify as Iraqi or I identify as Indian. No, you don't. You are. You just are that. But by the way,
as a distinct hierarchy that is anchored in a proximity to whiteness.
Interesting. I think colorism is internalized racism. I'm Calvin West, and I am an American.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Maya. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm Black. So I actually think that colorism existed before racism, and the fact that historically, for example, if you look at Europe or Asia, like serfs, peasants, people who were in the lower classes had to work and toil in the sun, and those who were royalty or aristocrats or whatever tend to be lighter skin. And so there has historically been a privileging of lighter skin over darker skinned individuals. But I think that with the onset of global white supremacy fueled by European colonialism, 1492 onward, it was then absorbed into racism.
yeah, colonialism, European colonialism, it was just 1492 onward. Didn't exist before, we don't have to worry about that. She is right in a lot of what she said historically. If you look at India and their system, their very old school system of the hierarchy of skin color, with the darkest people being noted as the untouchables, there is a very clear and distinct difference in the way that people of different shades are treated historically in many different countries. So that's something to talk about. I'm wondering if we're ever going to get into any discussions of it happening in the opposite direction. I'll leave it open. Hopefully they do.
Yeah, I completely agree as well. I identify as Iranian. As someone who's from like an Asian country.
I identify as Iranian. What?
That wasn't technically colonized. We even have colorism and that idea even without people coming in and telling us that. So it's almost like a preconceived idea that's in our heads.
I'm a mixed race Puerto Rican, and in the Latina community, it's you can understand it very much as a caste system where there is no shame to address darker skinned people by slurs.
Okay. There are personal consequences for colorism. There are also systemic consequences, and colorism has implications for public health, beauty, and all sorts of things in society.
Okay. So you said that you feel like it is internalized racism?
The blackest experience any black person can have is another black person telling them that they aren't black. And that is something that happens to lighter skinned black people, because there's this idea and that I've lived a different life because I'm a lighter skin. And that to me is the most anti-black thing you can do to anybody.
I have a feeling that he's going to be our conservative opinion on this specific topic so far, just based off what he said, because he says, I'm getting invalidated because I'm a lighter skinned black person and being told that my experience isn't black enough. So I have a feeling that he's going to be on the outskirts.
He also introduced himself as an American, if you noticed that, which I thought was definitely a tell that he is a seething racist. America! In this panel.
He's anti-black.
What are your thoughts on that? Sorry, I saw you had a little bit of a reaction.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
So I think often when lighter skinned people talk about experiencing bias from darker skinned people, I think that my first thought is just like, remember that colorism is an ism. And like when something has that ISM, it means institutional power plus prejudice. Darker skinned people.
What? When a word has ism at the end of it, it means institutionalized power. Wait, I want to hear exactly what she said again. Exactly what she said.
Just like remember that colorism is an ism. And like when something has that ISM, it means institutional power plus prejudice.
No, God, please, no.
Who institutional power? Who said that? Where did you guys learn that in school? That if something has ism at the end of it, that's what that means?
Oh yeah, when I learned about botulism in biology class, that's exactly what they told us.
Yeah, you know what? Like skepticism, cynicism, agnosticism, like all these different. There's so many. Yeah,
autism.
Yeah,
like, these are all systems with institutional power.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. I get what she's trying to say. She's trying to throw it in the camp of like colorism, racism, feminism, misogyny. You know, like it just doesn't. That does not make sense, and it is very much not true. And what is really unfortunate about that is you're going to hear that a lot.
Why does she feel like it's okay to say that about isms? They all fall in the same group for a reason. And there is a definition when you look over it for colorism. It does still fall, or if you look at the definition of ism, it still falls in the same category.
People do not have the ability, the institutional power to, for example, put you in prison for longer sentences because of being lighter skinned, or, you know, having less access to employment. There's actual statistics where like a darker skinned person with a master's degree usually has less employment opportunities or is less employable than a lighter skinned person as a bachelor's. And it's not to say that like bullying is like, I know that hurts. Like it's like personal sentiment. I know that actually feels bad. But I think that it's important to remember when we're talking about whether racism or colorism or anything that's an ism, that there's an element of institutional power that's added on to the prejudice.
This is like a little game that we play where we attach it to power and privilege so that you invalidate the lived experiences of other people. So he said, I've been told that I'm not black enough. And they go, well, you know, you're light skinned, so it doesn't even matter. Even though you are black, you are light skinned black. Therefore, you benefit from power and privilege, which makes your personal experience invalid. You cannot share that. We do not care about that. It's no longer colorism because you are represented in a group of people that have power. And it makes little to no sense considering, one, that guy is black, but two, that people who are considered powered and privileged often go through these experiences of being directly judged and experiencing pure prejudice and discrimination based on their skin color. It happens all the time. And if we're not going to validate the experiences of everyone who has evidence and proof that they've undergone an experience like this, then you don't really care about colorism. You only care about victimization and upholding that victimization.
I have pretty much dealt with the same racism.
I do feel like when darker skinned people express their frustration to lighter skinned people, that their lives might be different, harder. I think you sort of have to acknowledge your privilege, you know, or else it's very ignorant. Even though we're both Black.
What specifically does that mean? Like, I've had experiences in my life that have not been great. And I can assume that it's because of the color of my skin, right? We talk about these ideologies, right? Which I think we get lost in sometimes. And we have to just bring it back to reality of like, well, let's talk about your situation for a second.
Right.
How has it affected you specifically? And the answers that you get are, I didn't get an apartment, I didn't get a job, I didn't get that promotion, which happens to everybody, right? They can always talk about somebody else and what's happened in history, but they can't talk about their own lived experiences. And that's important.
I have plenty lived experiences. I mean, we could go from like, for me, I'm in the beauty industry, the beauty world. So I get invited to influencer events. And if I look around and I'm the darkest Black person, there's still a problem there.
BFFR. You are not the darkest person at beauty influencer events. BFFR. I love personally makeup, MUAs, all this stuff. There are plenty of makeup artists who are my skin tone, beauty influencers who are my skin tone, and far, far darker. If anything, it is super incentivized right now to release makeup and to sponsor beauty influencers who are of diverse backgrounds and skin tones. It is elevated if you are a Black person in this industry. Nobody's putting out makeup lines anymore where they really don't have shades for Black people for the most part. And that was a problem of the past. And we can talk about that being a problem of the past, but it needs to be acknowledged that there are plenty of Black people within these industries and in the beauty industry in particular. That's a glass ceiling that has been broken as far as I'm concerned.
That's interesting.
I find it very hard to believe that this man is saying he's the darkest Black person. And again, look at him very quickly. It's like Meghan Markle saying I'm the darkest Black person in London. It's the same.
You know what I mean? That's a perfect example of that. And you might not realize it, but white people, lighter skinned people, they might be more willing to approach you because you are of lighter skin. That's another, sure.
Might be. Might. Everything might be racist if you look into it hard enough. Everything might be colorism. Every missed opportunity that I've ever, skipped out on or lost out on in my life could be due to colorism and racism, but that doesn't mean that it is. And we make this big jump from could be to is.
Personal thing have you realized that?
Yes, I can acknowledge that may be the thing. Here's the other thing that happens. The other side of that, the other perspective on that is that I've done a lot of things in the acting world. I've missed roles because I'm not dark enough. And there's a lot of Black people who don't know that. They have no idea that your skin tone is actually highly sought out for.
But I feel like that's acting, they're looking to fill a specific role. Whereas if you're just applying for a job,
it's everywhere.
A lighter skinned person might get that opportunity over a darker skinned person.
I don't understand.
I get so many personal testimonials from young dark-skinned Black girls who are very detailed about how colorism affects their life. So obviously colorism is a systemic issue, but I think an important part of it is the personal battle like young Black girls endure. These girls are being bullied. Some are as young as 14, 13 years old, having really mental health crises in middle school. There's also so much research about how colorism shows up systemically. There's research on public health and the different health outcomes darker skinned Black people have as opposed to lighter skinned.
Whoa. How is that evidence of colorism? There's so many different things that could go into that. Again, we take in all this data and we go, well, dark-skinned people or Black people are affected more than lighter-skinned people are. Therefore, racism. There's so many other factors that could be, influencing that outcome.
Black people. And there's one about pulse oximeters being used during COVID and how the devices have harder time registering darker skin. And you can imagine the implications for that. And we know that the Black community has been disproportionately affected by COVID.
Okay, if pulse oxes aren't reading dark skin, that's not an example of like direct systemic colorism. It's just something that needs to be updated and worked on.
I still think
and you
that
can
homegirl
still,
should
you
be
know, get pulse and
empathetic
oxygen
to
on
how
people
people
who
address
can't read
colorism.
those
Like
on
the lady
their
said
fingers.
in the other video
So
that I posted,
certainly,
is that
if this
we
is
need
a
to
systemic
provide
problem,
safe
as you're making it
space
out
when
to
we're
be,
trying to deal
then
with our
yeah, pulse ox
issues.
machines need to be fixed. I can tell you, I've worked a lot with pulse ox machines prior to working here at PragerU, and I've never had the issue of a pulse ox machine not reading a Black patient. But that is just my own personal anecdotal experiences. I can't speak to that on a larger scale. As far as Black people being disproportionately affected by COVID, yeah, they're also like disproportionately affected by obesity in this country. And a lot of that is due to lifestyle choices. We can talk about socioeconomic status and things like that, but that's not a direct route to colorism and people who are directly discriminating against you because of the way that you look. A lot of this can be solved, or at least discussed, if we choose to have the discussion and not just blame it on colorism.
In terms of like deaths, I don't think that evidence can be divorced from the anecdotes, you know, because the anecdotes just supplement that evidence. They help put that evidence into context. And I'm so like fascinated by like the growing like scholarship around colorism, because I think it's about time people treat colorism with the same seriousness they treat racism.
Lamar, what are your thoughts?
When you come with statistics like that, that's the kind of supporting arguments that we need, as opposed to kind of moving away from the anecdotal, in my opinion, right? Because we're talking about something so big and so huge that affects everyone who is alive. I'm in the middle, you know, colorism exists for sure. I just think there's a lot of confirmation bias in our personal experiences that might drive us right to that term when it could be a number of other things.
Right. But she's talking about how particularly darker skinned women engage with structures, engage with power, engage with institutions. Per that exact point, there are continuing studies that show that in instances in which darker skinned women do report intimate partner violence, domestic partner violence, bruises on their body, strangulation marks are harder for police to see, nurses to see, physicians to see, because a lot about how they are trained and the way they interact with those victims are attuned to look for those marks on lighter skin tones. And so that also impacts a lot in terms of who is seen as the victim, who gets resources, who gets proper medical attention. A lighter skinned woman who presents like I do, who walks in with something that reads very clean cut, is likely to get more attention in an already deeply misogynistic and racist and sexist body than a woman who is much darker than I am.
Whoa! Whoa! That's a huge claim to make. Okay, first of all, the reality is, if I walk into a doctor's office with a huge bruise across my face or bruise across my neck, and somebody who's 10, 15 shades darker than me walks to the same doctor's office, of course it's going to be harder to tell that they have bruises on them. Of course, obviously. That doesn't make the system colorist. And you know what? When you're talking about engaging with systems, you know, you can communicate these things. You can say, I have a bruise here, or I'm affected in this way, or, you know, there's a laceration here. I know it's hard to see, but because of my skin tone, but there it is. I mean, this is going to be a reality regardless of what you do. And of course, clinicians and medical practitioners should be good at reading all skin tones and checking in on these things, but also we need to be good at communicating that these things are happening to us. It can't be all on a doctor or a physician to be able to recognize things that to anybody's human eye would be difficult to recognize when compared to a lighter skinned person. Wow.
So they seem to have presented a lot of evidence and studies. Are you changing your mind at all?
As well as self-made testimony, as well as anecdotal evidence. It goes back to how you feel about yourself.
I feel like it sounds like you're saying racism is like a choice almost.
How you respond to racism is, absolutely. And I know that that's uncomfortable, and I love it. This is my wheelhouse, trust me. How you respond to racism is a choice.
I'm hearing, particularly on this side of the room.
On this side of the room? You mean from this one guy? Like the language is just so like cushioned and blanketed. And I'm hearing particularly from this side of the room, from about 6'2" individual human being with a soul, body, and mind who may or may not be male. You're hearing from this guy.
This idea that you can make an individual choice outside of the context of history, culture, politics, structures. I don't believe that personally. I think when anybody buys a certain product, styles themselves a certain way, decides to not style themselves a certain way, read a certain book, use certain words in a job interview, approach a politician, I think all of that is informed by history, literally all of the time.
Let me pause for a second. So, I mean, like, in a philosophical sense, what she's saying is absolutely right. Like, everything that you do now is informed by the past, what you've been exposed to, you know, different prerequisites and things that you've been able to gain through your life experience and the life experience of others. And it goes on and on and on and on till you get back to, you know, the beginning of human civilization. So in a sense, what she's saying is right. But what she's trying to say is that you can never divorce these systems and the choices made within these systems from the, you know, the foundations of them or the racial paths of these systems. And that would be absolutely wrong. But it's neither here nor there. Taylor, were you going to say something?
Yeah, it's just a whole mentality that is built to keep you held down as an individual and to keep you thinking about the ways in which you're oppressed, the ways in which nothing that you do or nothing that you have at your disposal as an individual person can overcome and assert yourself in the world and make a life that's good for yourself. And you're a total prisoner of the history, or a total prisoner of the system, of the racist, you know, patriarchal society that we live in, and you're just stuck. And you know, I just want to ask these people, like, what's the solution? Because all I'm hearing is, but Boogeyman's still under the bed, but Boogeyman's still under the bed. And it's like, let's turn the lights on and look at some facts, look at what you do have the power to do as an individual. Let's look at the evidence that supports the claims that you're making, and let's have a serious discussion. But every time, like this guy, he keeps trying to make a point about, hey, well, you're in control. You have a little bit of control of how you respond to this, of what you're going to do about it, of how you're going to think. But he gets shot down immediately by everyone else in the room who's like, yeah, but systems, yeah, but power, yeah, but history, yeah, but all these structures. And this way of thinking is just like it's a ceiling above your head and above your life that you will never overcome, because you're always focused on proving to people that Boogeyman's under the bed, when let's be adults, you know, let's not be children here. Let's turn the lights on and let's deal with things. If we can identify specific areas, specific issues, specific structures or people who are racist, engaging in these racist practices or colorism, then yes, let's deal with those. Let's talk about them.
Right.
But if we make them the center of our universe and the only way that we can ever respond to someone saying, hey, well, here's maybe my path forward in life as an individual is, yeah, but you're held back by these structures, that's not getting you anywhere.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not going to accuse these specific people of being part of this camp, but it's almost like you don't want the issue to go away, because then your crutch is gone. Like, you have nothing to cripple yourself anymore. If these issues, you know, if these issues go away and we can no longer talk about them, then you have no excuse for where you are at in life. And it seems as though everybody who's sitting here is pretty successful. So, like, what are we even talking about?
Yeah, well, just to add on that, I think when you have put being an activist against this racist system as like an integral part of your identity, of how you find meaning and how you create value for yourself as a person. And it's like the story that you're telling yourself is, I live in this racist structure, and the way that I find meaning in life is by fighting against it. And if that racist structure doesn't exist or isn't as real as you think it is, then your brain is going to filter out evidence against that, because you need it to be true in order to justify and rationalize this belief and this story that you've staked your life on. And that's, I mean, the same. I know about this because I come from a hyper religious background where you need things to be true, and that comes at the expense of your ability to think critically and to be your true self and be free to and think about if these people, I'm sorry, I'm going on a rant here, but think about if these people weren't held back by this ideology, like what could they be focusing on? What value could they be creating in the world? But instead it's all just about proving to themselves and proving to everyone else that we need to have these conversations. We need to talk about this. We need to describe the ways in which we're oppressed. We need to look at all the different structures and all this stuff. And that's all it ever is. There's never anything beyond that. And it's just unfortunate to see and that it is ultimately sort of limiting to themselves.
Yeah, and it's like hopping on to what you said. It's like it's not even to invalidate that these things exist, or that like the ideas which you've founded this ideology on exist. Colorism exists. People do judge people based off the color of their skin, and some people do give preferential treatment to lighter skinned people. Okay. So what? Now what? Like, can we acknowledge? Do we move on? There seems to just be no moving on from the point. And it's always, again, I say colorism exists. I'm talking about like on an individual level. I'm not talking about some sort of systemic, foundational, institutionalized issue that everybody's dealing with on a day-to-day basis. I'm saying that, sometimes people make judgments of other people based on what their skin tone looks like. Are those people particularly intelligent? No. So why are you bothering with these people, and why are you letting it consume every part of who you are as a person?
I want to talk about anybody's individual experiences of it unless it's an experience that is affected by colorism in the way that you guys are comfortable with it. Colorism also happens on the other end. When I talk about the internalized racism and how lighter skinned voices, they don't get heard, they don't get pushed out there within the Black community, I get eye rolls, I get, people. There's a reaction to that is very negative and not welcoming. And
I'm not in the business of denying people their lived experiences. Like, who am I?
But I'm probably going to deny your lived experience that you just said. Oh, let's hear. Let's wait. I may be wrong, and she might not do it, but I feel like she is going to invalidate what he just said.
But I think we can also acknowledge that those things happen. Like, lighter skinned people have like certain experiences where they feel invalidated because of their complexion. And we can also...
can you acknowledge that colorism affects lighter skinned people?
There's no such thing as reverse colorism. Same way there's no such thing as reverse racism, reverse sexism,
So I'm not trying to invalidate any of your lived experiences of colorism, but colorism does not happen to you and you cannot experience it. And she did nod for those of you who maybe didn't see her. So do you see? They don't really care about the issue. They don't really care about the issue. They care about their own victimization and the own, chess piece that they play within what is a larger game of just crippling yourself and making you feel like you are oppressed at every turn in your life. They do not care when it happens to other people. They do not care to defend other people who are maybe actually falling victim to what it is that they're complaining about and talking about. But like I said, we knew that. We knew that to be the case.
Verseism, that's what I believe.
Okay, that's your opinion. I respect it.
I agree in the sense that the experiences you're talking about that circulate around like all this coded language of like, you're not actually Black, or you're not Black enough, or like, quantifying.
Which also happens with white people.
I just want to finish speaking.
I'm sorry. I just want to add to your point. Go ahead.
I have experienced versions of that myself, and I do not consider that to be colorism. Colorism is distinctly about a system and resources and visibility and autonomy within those systems.
Invalidate based on our own definition. Even though you're using our own definition to talk about your own experiences, you're not, it's not part of a power system. It's not part of some sort of privilege hierarchy. So everything that you experience, moving on.
Like, to add on with...
You gonna say something, Taylor?
Yeah, just the irony that this is a panel discussing colorism, and what she's saying to this guy, your experience of being a victim of actual colorism doesn't count because you're in the wrong place on the power structure. And we're effectively not talking about colorism. We're talking about power dynamics. We're talking about a worldview that judges everything based on the color of your skin, which it's ironically itself kind of is colorism. So it's funny, like your value as a human being, the validity of your experience hinges on the color of your skin. Well, what is that if not colorism?
Right. Exactly. They've become the very thing they claim to hate.
She said like about the whole bullying and things, like that actually does happen. Like I've been bullied just for, I consider myself as brown skin, but back then I was like really dark skin. And I did lighten up like probably 2 shades, maybe 3 shades because of it.
Can you tell me why you started to bleach your skin?
It's like you growing up in school, you have mainly guys making fun of your skin color and calling you charcoal, calling you dark. So growing up, you just start to feel like, oh, okay, so no one likes me because of my skin color. Like, okay, I see. So that kind of does something to your head. You feel me? And also we have social media. They do praise lighter skinned women, Latinas, whatever, pale skinned women. So that kind of makes you feel like you're not desired. You feel me? So, and that's why I started bleaching my skin. That's why I started skin lightening because of it, you know? And you know, people that do buy my stuff, like they do tell me that it's helping them feel more confident. I know it's kind of sad, but it's like, that's the society we live in now.
So when you say when people buy your stuff, can you talk about your business and what it is that you sell?
I sell skin bleaching cream. Pretty controversial, I know, but I do have negative comments. People saying you hate yourself, you wish you were white, this and this and that, you're a follower, like, just a lot of stuff, but I don't really like listen to it. I really don't care. I guess how society sees dark women, like we're basically the losing team. Like who wants to be on the losing team?
She's mad confusing me a little bit. So she got bullied in school for being dark and then lightened her skin and bleached her skin. And now she sells skin bleaching products to other women. And on its face, I know a lot of people will hear that, and particularly Black people, and go like, oh, I cannot believe she's selling skin bleaching products, but they don't hold the same energy when people are selling tanners to white girls, or people are getting nose jobs or face filler, or, you know, wearing makeup. They don't care about that. And that's direct changing of your appearance, sometimes under the knife. But skin bleaching is such a horrible thing because it's something that Black people are doing to appear lighter. And that's part of a system, right? And it's part of power and privilege that's baked into an institution. So that's extra wrong. But when people tan, it's not wrong. When people wear makeup, it's not wrong. When people change their entire nose for the rest of their life, that's not wrong. So hopefully they don't come at her any type of way, although I anticipate that's what's going to happen. It really just sounds like you got bullied in school, which this happens to everybody. Think of anything that you do to change your appearance on any given day, or anything that you have done in the past to change your appearance. It's because somebody made you feel insecure about it, and you went and you changed it. It's no different than some of the women who are probably wearing makeup right now on this panel, or maybe if somebody's got a nose job on this panel. It's really not that different.
I felt like lighter skin women, they were more desired and they get away with more and they have more privileges than I did. And also, I also thought that personally, I also thought I looked prettier lighter. And for me, I honestly I don't think it's a big deal because I feel like people want to be darker and people want to be lighter. So
yeah. There's people who want to move to both sides of the never-ending spectrums of beauty, and trends come in and trends come out. I mean, look at Kim Kardashian and all these celebrities who are taking weight loss shots because now it's suddenly in to be skinny again, even though, you know, thousands of women went down to Miami and Mexico and got BBLs and came back to the United States because they wanted to be slim, thick, and all this stuff. But that's out now. Body trends shift, change. Our own personal perceptions of ourselves shift and change. And some people will do whatever it takes at any given moment to fit a certain perception that they have of what is beautiful. Now, should she be judged more for bleaching her skin than people who do all of the other beauty trends and things that happen? No, not in my opinion.
I don't see why it's such a taboo. I'm not ashamed of it because I kind of see the hypocrisy in it.
Being a lighter person, I do experience a tremendous amount of privilege, and I'm not denying that of you at all. I think what upset me about the skin bleaching is that a lot of mothers do it to their daughters. And from my own experience, sometimes your parents do it to you and you don't have the consent of the child. Fair. Or someone like me could end up much lighter than I was in my childhood and kind of have an identity issue. And it's just, for me, it's a matter of consent.
And also, I feel like you have to ask yourself, what's the goal? You know, the goal is to end colorism, racism. I feel like you changing your skin tone is just feeding into the cycle.
Why do you have foundation on and blush and eyeshadow? Because you look prettier than the average human being looks. Your skin looks a lot smoother because of the foundation you're wearing than other people's skin looks. Don't you want to get rid of the stigma of textured skin and how people are affected by the way that their skin looks? Shouldn't you take all that off? Why are you perpetuating a system that you claim to be against if you care for people's inner beauty and what they look like naturally? Do you see how that's not making sense? And how people can just like make their own choices for their beauty and how they look and what they want to look like and how they want to be presented to the world.
Right. Everyone should be free to express themselves and present themselves to the world in the way that makes them feel best. Now, the problem from my point of view is you don't want to be doing things to yourself because of insecurities. That's a generally unhealthy thing as a person. But that's, to me, what to focus on is like, am I insecure about my appearance for unhealthy reasons, or am I trying to optimize my appearance for the world, work the best with what I have, and put the best version of myself that makes me feel good and confident out into the world? And that's a very personal question as to whether that's rooted in whether what you're doing is rooted in insecurity or whether it's rooted in just taking care of yourself as best that you can. But that's the conversation and the part of that we should focus on, not, are you betraying your race or are you participating in it? Because then it's just this endless cycle, and there's no way to do all of that without being hypocritical, as you just pointed out.
Yeah, and this might be a hot take, but 9 times out of 10, people are doing anything that they do to their bodies out of insecurity. And I don't care if it's something that's particularly healthy for your body, like you're eating right and going to the gym and all these things. These things are great and good for you. But 9 times out of 10, people are doing it because they're insecure about themselves. And that's something to acknowledge. You don't just go wear makeup because you're not insecure about yourself. And I say this, I wear makeup every single day. You don't just go to the gym because you're not insecure about yourself. And it's very hard to divorce yourself of insecurities. So while it's not something that we should encourage people to do, it's literally what everybody's doing all the time. All the time.
I think making money off of that is very kind of shady.
You making money off of the beauty industry is really shady. If you're going to call her out and say that she's making money off of skin bleaching, that's shady. You being a beauty influencer is super shady, and you should stop doing it because you're perpetuating false narratives. Some people don't have the capability of buying makeup and putting it on their face. Some people are disabled to the point where they can't apply makeup anymore. Some people have, cystic acne and are struggling with that, and they want to be able to show their skin. And because you put on foundation, you're making their skin sort of they're looking down upon themselves. They're looking at something that's unachievable to themselves. So what you're doing is shady. You see how it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't.
Some people just personally feel like they look better lighter, just like some people feel like they look better with makeup on. Why not you just tell everybody, love your natural skin. You don't need makeup. The
being
skin bleaching
systemically
is
oppressed from not wearing makeup, though.
Really? Because I can think of people complaining about beauty, about pretty privilege and beauty privileges and all this stuff, and women in the feminist movement complaining that if they don't wear makeup, they're told that they're not looking after themselves or that they're not putting in effort. So based on a lot of leftist dogma and progressive thinking, people are systemically oppressed due to not having access to makeup or not having a willingness to put on makeup. So again, if we're going to make the argument that she's doing something wrong by selling skin bleaching products or by bleaching her skin, you have to be consistent. And they're not being consistent. And guess what? It's because they wear makeup. It's because when they go out on Saturday night after filming this show, they're going to put on mascara and foundation and blush in front of the mirror. And we can never be critical of things that we're doing ourselves because we are the best.
Thank you all for watching Alicia Intellectual Talks. Come back again. We just discussed colorism. I want to know your thoughts and what you thought about it. Peace.